Welcome back. At this year's CAMM conference, I had the chance to speak with Bethany Groff Dorau of the Museum of Old Newbury and Graham McKay from Lowell's Boat Shop. Here's my chat with them.
I'm Bethany Groff Dorau. I am on the board of Lowell's Boat Shop in Amesbury, Massachusetts, and I'm also the executive director of the Museum of Old Newbury in Newburyport, Massachusetts.
All right, and here you are at the 2025 CAMM conference. What are you doing here, and what do you hope to get out of it?
I am here with my colleague from Lowell's Boat Shop, and we had a presentation on an artifact, a maritime artifact, that came into our museum, the Museum of Old Newbury, and Graham's experience as a practitioner, a sailor, and a person that really understood the mechanics of and the language of the maritime world was key to understanding an item in our collection, and we thought that that was an interesting model for other maritime museums to look at, to really interact with their local museums and historical societies where some incredible maritime treasures are kept, and really, form those partnerships. And our whole shtick is that it's really better together. We're two small museums, one an active hands-on museum, one sort of a traditional small but mighty museum. And this one artifact is a great example of how partnerships of this kind can really take a fairly modest piece of a collection and just blow it into a nationally important story.
Yeah. And Graham, if you could introduce yourself and your organization. I know you're at Lowell's Boat Shop.
I'm Graham McKay. I'm the executive director at Lowell's Boat Shop in Amesbury, Massachusetts, and we're America's oldest boat shop, and we are a working museum now, so part historic museum and part actual working operating boat shop.
Bethany and Graham gave an incredible presentation at the CAMM conference called Ice Ship to Calcutta, Captain Pritchard and the Ultimate Ephemera. I asked them to talk a little bit about the meaning of that presentation to all of us in the maritime heritage world.
Well, me first.
You're going to bring us stuff.
Well, water's all around us, and the sea touches us all in some way, and we're predisposed, myself especially, to being interested in these sorts of things. But this particular story is gripping, I think, because of the tragedy of it. The captain dying 3 days out, and a young man. He was 31.
Yeah.
Married. But the incredible nature of this artifact, this extraordinarily fragile artifact that has survived 150 years to come into, the hands of the Museum of Old Newbury to be interpreted, and then to find so many other records within that same museum that speak to the same voyage and the same event. It really paints a holistic picture of what happened. And, history, the further we get removed from the actual events, the more distant they become in our memory, and the harder they are to understand. And when you have, something so tangible as this piece, it makes it much easier to, put yourself there and imagine that scene and what everyday people went through back in 1864.
Yeah, I would just say that I have not typically thought of myself or of ourselves at the Museum of Old Newbury as a maritime museum, and I am absolutely convinced I'm a wild-eyed evangelist for being a maritime museum. It is the message that is here, that has been reiterated over and over again, is everyone's connection to the sea, everyone's connection to water of some kind, the objects. I would argue that pretty much every museum in the world is a maritime museum in some way. There's some, pathway that leads us back to that universal story of water and travel.
Right. And one thing I found really interesting, and this is the personal aspect of this story, is that you were related to both the captain of the ship and his wife. Could you talk about that?
And the cabin boy.
And the cabin boy.
I think I'm uniquely placed to run the Museum of Old Newbury because my family has been in Newbury since 1635, since the first European settlement. It's all a little bit of a fiction in a way. Genealogy there's probably, next to no common DNA with these people who are my fourth or fifth cousins, but it is a traditional way that people made sense of the world, and thought of themselves as a larger family. It's in a way we're all a little bit tribal, and especially at the museum, we have an incredible genealogy resource. We are an incredible genealogy resource, and what I find is just that making those connections for myself helps me understand the way that other people make those connections for themselves. So we call it inbred townie bingo, where whenever I'm giving a talk, I try to figure out whether or not I'm related to those people. But again, it's just another way of connecting. There are so many different ways of connecting, and that's just one, and it gives everybody a laugh. So I always win inbred townie bingo.
That is fantastic. Okay, well, thank you both very much for taking the time to chat with me today.